What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Crimson Connective from the booth. I'm your host this week with Cole being out of town again, Alex Markham. This week, I got one of my main guys, Hod Rabino. Hod, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Alex. How about yourself?
Man, I'm doing good, buddy. I'm doing good. These chats are always fun with you, man. If fans could just be a fly on the wall for over half the conversations you and me and have had over the years, it's been a good time, dude. So I'm looking forward to this.
No, absolutely. Same here. Same here. And, I'm glad that Utah and ASU are going to be in the same conference next year. And for people that haven't seen already, November 1st, the Big 12 is unveiling its football scheduling format. So I think that's real exciting both for Utah fans and Arizona State fans. You don't have to wait until December or January like the old days, right?
Right. Yeah. And it's going to be really interesting to see how some of the teams even fill up their schedules too, because Utah was already playing Baylor. I'd have to take a look at the schedule real quick to see, what other games would have overlapped, but
yeah,
definitely, kind of an interesting scramble that everybody's doing.
Yeah. Arizona State just finished this year home and home with Oklahoma State, and who knows if it won't be 3 years in a row where the Cowboys and Sun Devils meet. So that's going to be some oddities here and there, but it'd be exciting, I think, to go to the Big 12, see a little different part of the country, and a conference that may be a little less challenging than the Pac-12 when you see how many teams were ranked in the top 25, especially earlier in the year. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out, both for ASU, Utah, and Colorado and Arizona for that matter too.
Yeah. I was going to be kicking into this with you a little bit. Obviously, we want to talk about the game coming up, right? But, this is so important to talk about. And I know you and me have had so many conversations on this. But, how surreal is it to you that, this is it? The top 12 is no longer after this.
Yeah, I think it's really going to hit everybody tomorrow when you actually see a 2024 schedule. I don't know if it's going to be an exact schedule or schedule format, but now you get to see okay, ASU is going to play Oklahoma State next year, Baylor the year after, Texas Tech, back-to-back years, whatever the case may be. I think that's when it's really going to hit fans, when they actually get to see some kind of football schedule format, or maybe there'll even be some exact details as far as home and away. But nonetheless, I think it's sad that the Pac-12 is really no more. And, I don't want to overstate the obvious and talk about what a disaster Larry Scott was as the Pac-12 commissioner. And George Kiliakov, I think, just had way too much mess to clean up when he first got here. I think he's more competent than Larry Scott, and sure, the bar is pretty low, but the amount of, doo-doo that he had to step into was just way, way too much to just, clean off your shoe in a nanosecond and move on. So it really is unfortunate. And, I'll take some ownership over here as somebody who covers Arizona State and say that Arizona State, University President Michael Crow was one of the Larry Scott enablers, I felt, for years and years and years, and really allowed him to mismanage the conference on so many levels. And it really is a damn shame. But I'm happy that, Arizona State, its rival, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, all found a home that geographically made sense, because I think that teams like Washington and Oregon, sure, they're going to the Big Ten, and it's a big-time conference, and some even say maybe even more prestigious than the Big 12. But, man, that travel schedule is going to get really, really old. Even in football when it's really not that often. But, man, just try to imagine to cover one of the basketball teams and truly make every road game, or at least most of them, or any other sport that you may be covering. It's going to be really, really tough. So I think that the Four Corner schools really have it much better from a geographical standpoint than the other teams that are leaving the Pac-12. And, Washington State and Oregon State, that might be even more intriguing, I think, than, what the Big 12 schedule is going to look like. Because, man, I just really wonder how many Mountain West teams are they going to play, and are they going to really be de facto, Mountain West conference members. Really, really curious to see how that shakes out. So next couple of months are going to be really interesting as far as how everything is going to look in 2024 and beyond.
So take me through you and me have had conversations. I've
Mhm.
discussed with everybody about, why Utah was so loyal to the Pac-12 because, the Pac-12 has done a lot for Utah over this last decade plus, right? Put them in the position that they're in now where, they've turned into the big dog. Obviously they've had all these injuries this year and, not every year is going to go your way, right? But from our conversations, it was really Utah and ASU were really the two driving forces, really trying to hold that conference together before it fell apart, right before that final meeting.
Yeah, and I know this is going to sound really stupid, but I'm about to say, but trust me, guys, this is the truth. Michael Crow, the university president, really felt that it was cool, and I really can't think of another word to use, for Arizona State to be in a conference with such academic prestige as having a Stanford and a Cal, and probably even throwing a UCLA and even Washington for that matter. And that really was the driving force behind him trying to keep this conference really by duct tape, in the last few days of July and first few days of August. And really, that's really the only reason to it. It was pretty evident that it was quite the blow not to have both LA schools there in the conference anymore. And maybe there was some kind of facade that, okay, so what if the LA schools are leaving? We can still keep it together and add SMU or add San Diego State or whatever other schools were rumored to be added there. And I just think that the university president here at Arizona State and I heard the Oregon State University president was also in the same mindset of like, okay, we can keep this conference together, we can keep it work, and we want to have that academic prestige of having Stanford and having Cal in the conference. And again, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, what the hell does that have to do with athletics? And you're right, it has nothing to do with athletics. But if somebody's asking me what is the driving force for the university president at Arizona State for trying to keep this conference come hell or high water, and thankfully he failed in the end. It really was about the academic prestige. It didn't have to do a whole lot with athletics. And no, sure. I mean, I know that to some extent, travel is easier between Arizona State and the Northern California schools, and let alone Utah and Colorado. But I just feel that should not be a factor when you talk about the long-term health. Everything is about the money.
Right.
I mean, let's not pretend that there's some academic virtue over here that's really tied into athletics. When you have a coach on an average making $3.5-4 million a year, then you just need every penny that you can put together. And if the media rights deal in the Pac-12 was never going to even touch the Big 12 or other conferences out there, then it was a pretty easy decision to make. So, yep, here we are, brand new conference, which again becomes even more real. We're going to get that football scheduling format this week getting published.
Yeah. Before kicking into everything else, I really kind of feel like, just even the fact that like Utah and ASU really going together, trying to save that towards the end and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like you're going to see over the next 3 to 5 years something to develop between those two where, the rivalry, I felt like it was starting to be a budding rivalry a
Sure.
few years back, right? And then there was a little bit of hate and animosity. You could kind of maybe blame that a little bit on the good old QB that ended up going to LSU, right? And the parent,
Sure.
but uh, but now just with how everything is and how the dust is settled and all this stuff, Utah's going into a conference with their hated rival, but at the but at the same time too, BYU, right? But at the
Well,
same
I thought
time,
you were going to say Colorado, Alex. Come on now.
dude,
I
remember the
know. I
Rockies,
know.
man? Jeez, Dion can talk that up all he wants.
I
Come
know.
on.
That
Oh, wait.
I haven't seen a more forced rivalry, not only in the Pac-12 but anywhere in the
Oh,
country. Like trying to make
so
Utah
bad.
and Colorado rivals. That was
It
just
was so bad,
weird.
man, so bad.
Weird. Yeah.
That's been the nice thing. So like Arizona State started kind of becoming more that rival than
Sure.
Colorado, right? And then it
Sure.
kind of tapered off a little bit. And then, Utah and USC. USC would never say it's a rivalry. I wouldn't say it
Sure.
was a rivalry, but it was just one of those interesting games every year, right? And the
Absolutely.
banter back and forth and the hatred between the two, or smart assness, whatever you want to call it, right? and then Utah had a good thing going with Oregon, where it was weird, man, but it was a respect. It was a friendly rivalry.
Mhm.
And I feel like going into the Big 12, there's going to be something of an in between of how the how the Utah USC rivalry was and how the Utah Oregon rivalry was. Somewhere on an in between with how it's going to develop that much more with Utah and the Sun Devils these next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, 100%. We've had a lot of discussions between me and my subscribers talking about, okay, who's the team that ASU hates the most after Arizona, obviously. And I also believe that Utah maybe didn't surpass USC for number 2, but definitely, I would say 2A and 2B. And some fans absolutely refuse to believe that. But I don't know why, just because Utah only entered the Pac-12, was it 2011, if I'm not mistaken?
Yep.
So it's been, kind of maybe young rivalry. And, and USC has been a rival ever since 1978 when the Pac-8 became the Pac-10, when both Arizona schools joined back then. No, but I 100% agree with you, Alex. I think that Utah and ASU is definitely becoming a pretty heated rivalry. And, going back to my earlier point, that's why I'm happy that both teams are still going together to the Big 12. And ASU still has Arizona, and Utah, I guess, still has Colorado, if they want to overlook BYU as a rival. So maybe Utah has 2 true rivals in this new conference. Who knows?
And Colorado, I mean, that's a conversation for another day. I mean, I respect Dion. Okay, I don't like some of his approaches. I don't agree. Okay, so we're getting a little off track, so we'll dive in a second for everybody, right? But the whole jewelry thing this last weekend, right?
Wow, that's crazy,
dude. It's okay. Had your son not been flaunting the damn Rolex, that wouldn't have happened. Right?
I agree, but it's kind of sad. I mean, in the Rose Bowl of all places, this happens. And I'm not saying it's better. I'm saying it's better if it happens, in Tempe and Tucson.
There's no justifying it happening.
No, of course not. Yeah, but I think it's just a little more jarring that it's happening in the Rose Bowl of all places. Like, wow, really?
Yeah.
But
somebody had said that that's the second time it's happened with the Dion team. I don't know how true that is.
Like this year or back at Jackson State? Oh, Jackson State. Okay.
So
you got to be careful about that. I mean, sometimes you see stuff in movies that I guess maybe imitates actually real life, where men tell their women, hey, we're going to this part of town, don't flaunt your jewelry. And I mean, you kind of hate it when other people have to dictate how you behave or what you wear. I mean, I'm not condoning that by any means, but sometimes you got to be smart about stuff like that. And maybe it was better for them to keep their jewelry in the locker in the home games and maybe travel a little light in away games. But at the same time, I agree that you don't want people to dictate your lives to that extent. It really is a damn shame. I think that ASU is going to play UCLA next week. I hope those players are going to live and learn and travel light on the on the carrot meter over there to Pasadena.
For sure. Dude, so let's kick into this week, man. So it's an interesting year, right? Mm-hmm. Because Utah came into this with so much hope and so much hype, with the one thing being, when is Cam Rising back, right? That was the linchpin on all this. It obviously didn't go to fruition. Utah's dealing with what they have to deal with, and they keep losing guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that loss to Oregon last week, I could see it coming from a mile away, because it's just you can only be near the top 10 for so long with one loss and keep losing all these key crucial like first and second string guys, right? So it's going to be really interesting seeing going forward just how Utah's season goes, because suddenly it's like, with their standing and how their offense is performing, there's not really a lot of gimme games, with ASU. Obviously you're going through the post-Herm Edwards stuff with Kenny Dillingham. Mm-hmm. I know that he's provided a lot of hope for everybody out there. He's a great guy. He's had some pretty interesting sound bites to crack up over, right? But it's definitely a transition period over there. So it's going to be unique this week what's your general feelings on this Arizona State team and just the state of the program right now?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think people knew that Herm Edwards and his era left a big mess in Tempe. And as much as Kenny Dillingham is uber motivated to turn it around, and I think the fact that he is an ASU alumnus really resonates quite a bit, because when somebody like him says, I'm here for the long haul, I'm not here to bounce another job, you really believe him, because he's really that motivated and really bleeds maroon and gold, cares about this program as much as the most diehard fan out there. I'm not sure people also point to his very young age and being the youngest Power 5 head coach. And sure, that also would ensure you that you're probably going to get a coach here that's going to be there for the long haul. But I think that the excitement turned into somewhat disappointment when ASU just lost the game after game after game, embarrassing losses at home like Fresno State, 29-0. Playing games like Cal in Colorado, where ASU really had no business losing that game, and even USC, I would say, was a very, very winnable game for them too. So I think the fan base was in a little bit of despair. I mean, I know patience is almost a four-letter word when it comes to college football, and as much of a reclamation project that a coach may have on his hands, sometimes fans, and I don't know if justifiably so or not, are just not willing to buy into that narrative, and they want the change to happen right here, right now. I wasn't the only one that thought that ASU maybe could have squeezed 6 wins of the season and be bowl eligible. And obviously, when the postseason ban, the self-imposed, I should say, postseason ban came down, so maybe that was like, okay, a sign that, okay, maybe this ASU team is not even going to win 6 games just because, the whole, karma aspect, for lack of a better term, doing the self-imposed postseason ban. But I think fans were really dismayed that they barely beat Southern Utah in the season opener. And sure, as people forget, there was actually a 2.5-hour lightning delay. I mean, yes, that game ended like at 1:00 in the morning or some ridiculous time like that. So maybe people took that as an anomaly. But, then losing to Oklahoma State at home, a very winnable game. Like I said, 29-0 loss to Fresno State at home, a game that I think people still scratching their heads until today. The level of excitement really went down quite a bit. A lot of people thought, because ASU has 8 home games this year, that they really would be able to surprise, maybe sneak up on some people. And I think that everybody came to a quick realization, maybe after that Fresno State loss, that, okay, this is really going to be a long reclamation project, and people are going to have to just buckle up and be ready to have more valleys and peaks during this year. And surely that's what happened. But, here they are after the long-awaited Power 5/Pac-12 win against Washington State. So maybe fans are seeing this program in a little different light. But I don't think people really are critical of Kenny Dillingham. I mean, sure, he's making some mistakes that a rookie coach is making, and he's mad.
Of course he would, yeah.
And and he's mad enough to admit it too. So I think, for now, people are willing to ride with Kenny Dillingham, knowing that maybe 2024 is not going to be as rough, but, it's not going to be a banner year. And with all the transition to the Big 12, I don't know if that's something that's really going to maybe hold back some of the progress that you want to see in year 2, year 3 from a new head coach. But I think overall, folks are happy with Kenny Dillingham. And again, they just have to ride out these next 2-3 years until they get to a level that would be what's perceived acceptable level of football in Tempe.
For sure. So, I mean, obviously when you're a fan of a program, even though they just went through what they went through, and, you see some hope on the horizon just because, it was a good hire, right? And breathing some excitement in. You also get the transfer portal where you're losing plenty of guys, but you're able to bring guys in. So you're able to turn it around a little bit easier, right? I mean, I can see where maybe some of that false hope could have maybe set in, right?
Sure.
From an outsider's perspective, I mean, I saw and could tell it was going to be a rougher year just because there were so many guys that ASU lost that were key guys last year, right? That, that still had eligibility remaining. So within all of that and some of the new guys that have kind of came in, talk to me about some of those new guys that are really going to be somebody to, watch this coming Saturday. The ASU has been pretty excited about this, kind of help steady the ship a little bit.
Yeah, I think we really have to start on defense because I think the defense for Arizona State has been absolutely outstanding. And I know the win and loss record and some of the stats that are out there may not point to that, but I think anybody that actually watched the game film from start to finish on, I would say, all the ASU games this year would see a unit that is head and shoulders better than what we've seen in 2022. Granted, the bar was pretty dang low back then, but nonetheless, I think that Brian Ward, who was Washington State's defensive coordinator last year, has been absolutely a miracle worker in Tempe. And this really has been fueled by the newcomers. You look at the pass rush for Arizona State, it's really head and shoulders from what it was last year. And the two players I would point over there are Clayton Smith, transfer from Oklahoma, and Prince Dorba, a transfer from Texas. They have definitely been leading the charge, especially Prince Dorba, in terms of the increased pass rush efforts. In the interior, Deshaun Mallory, when it comes to interior defensive linemen, the transfer from Michigan State is one of the highest rated, not only in the Pac-12, but also in the nation. That's been an absolute bullseye of a transfer portal addition. At linebacker, you have a linebacker by the name of Trey Brown, who was at Washington State with defensive coordinator Brian Ward, and also linebackers coach A.J. Cooper, who also made the move from Pullman to Tempe. He's been a leader there on defense and in the linebacker group. Was a little injured, but nonetheless, definitely has been one of the better players. I think maybe the biggest surprise for the transfer portal was Tate Romney. And if the name sounds familiar, yes, he did. He was at BYU for a cup of coffee, but he did prep locally here at Chandler High School. And he's been a really, really pleasant surprise and one of the better players on defense. When you look at the secondary and the newcomers over there, there's really not a whole lot of newcomers because that was actually one of the more established groups on the entire team. But two players from Austin P, an FCS school in the South, have actually been very pleasant surprises. D Ford, the cornerback, and Shamari Simmons, the safety. So really, overall, I would say the ascension of the ASU defense, especially in the defensive line and the linebackers, really due to having some great transfer portal additions. When it comes to offense, if quarterback Drew Prime, the transfer from Notre Dame, was healthy, maybe I could give you a better assessment of if he is truly an asset or not.
Mm-hmm.
But really hasn't been able to show a whole lot. One, I would say another pleasant surprise from the transfer portal on offense is DeCarlos Brooks, a running back from Cal. I think that he's been quite the force in the backfield, and he is complementing, I would say, maybe the best transfer portal addition that ASU got, definitely on this side of the ball, like Cam Scadaboo from Sacramento State, another FCS program. And when Scadaboo and DeCarlos Brooks are both on the field healthy and playing well, and we saw that last week against Washington State, we saw it the week before at Washington, suddenly the rushing game, not in Utah standards, but still at a pretty high level and helping Arizona State's passing game quite a bit. So those are some of the transfers on both sides of the ball for Arizona State that really haven't been able to stick out. And Arizona State, much like Colorado, is heavily reliant on its transfer portal additions. And I think for the most part, ASU was able to do well in that arena. And curious to see how they do with the next batch, because some of the transfer portal additions are in their last year of eligibility, and ASU is obviously losing some seniors too. And at one time, I know Rivals ranked Arizona State's transfer portal, I think, number 2 in the country. So, and I think there was some merit to that based on how those players played. But, for good or for bad, at the beginning of December, they're going to have to start all over again and bring, a few dozen players from the transfer portal. And we'll see if they can do just as well this time around. But again, I think by and large, the large number of transfer portal additions to Arizona State did result in some quality addition in various positions on the roster.
You mentioned having to start all over again in the next few months here in the transfer portal, man. I still don't know what to think about the transfer portal yet. I mean, I think it's great for the players. I don't like that it's
Mhm.
kind of turned into a free agency thing.
Yeah,
We can thank the glitz and glam guys to in SoCal for that, right? But at the
sure.
same time, too, look what that's got them too. So it's going to be interesting to see teams look and find that balance, right? Where not to talk about the whole USC and Utah aspect again, right? But
Mhm.
um, you know, Utah has sustained success because there's a culture that
Mhm.
everybody's bought into, right? And that takes time. That's something that USC doesn't have,
Yep.
even though they think they can go get, all these top of the line transfers and fit them right in. And it's turned ugly, right? And
Yeah.
so there's still something there with every team out there needing to figure out how to like perfectly blend the transfer portal. There's no right rhyme or reason to it yet.
Yeah, and I think the transfer portal really helped teams like ASU and Colorado,
Mhm.
which really
Big
had to do a massive roster turnover. I
time.
mean, Colorado won one game last year, ASU won three. I mean, not to sound too harsh over here, but obviously there was a lot of players on this team that were not going to cut it in the Pac-12 level or even the
Yeah.
Big 12 level next year, if you want to look at it that way. So when you have a massive roster turnover, as Colorado and ASU had, the transfer portal has been an absolute godsend. Obviously, that NCAA rule, which really had to go out of the window and really has, that you're not limited to 25 additions, period, whether it be high school, JUCO, or transfer portal. You add as many players as you want, as long as you hit that 85 threshold overall. So I think that's one more law that did help Colorado and Arizona State, quite a bit.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think when it comes to opinions of transfer portal, it just really depends where you at in your stage of the program. And
Right.
an established program like Utah really has the luxury to just pick and choose whatever transfer portal additions they need, and still rely on good recruiting from the high school and junior college ranks. But with Colorado and ASU, there was really no patience that could have been exercised. They wanted to really make a splash, and I think both of them to some extent have been able to do it. I mean, you're not going to hit 100%
Mhm. No,
on
I
transfer
agree.
portal
I
additions.
really
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, just like you're not going to hit 100% on every high school or junior college kid you're going to bring in. But I think for Colorado and ASU, it's been a godsend. So at least if you ask the fan bases in Tempe and Boulder, they're totally okay with the transfer portal. They know they're going to lose a lot of players, but they know they're also going to add a bunch of players too. So they're okay with that. Some other programs in the Pac-12, Big 12 may look at it differently, but again, it just really depends where you're at in your evolution as a program.
For sure, man. So, obviously you mentioned Pine. Everybody was thinking he was going to be coming in, being the guy, right? And then you guys bring in the already well-traveled Jaden Rashada.
True freshman Rainer Shida.
Right, right. And you guys, well, Arizona State's quarterback room has been nuts, just like Utah's, right? But it seems like unlike Utah, God bless Bryson Barnes' heart. Like he's doing everything he can. He was a
Yeah.
walk-on. He's a good kid, right? He's not going to face USC's defense every week
Mhm.
to
Yeah,
help with those stats.
sure.
But ASU's got a kid that just kind of seems to have come out of nowhere. Trenton. Now I'm probably going to completely butcher the name, but
Bourget.
Burgay, right?
Bourget. Trent Bourget. Yeah, and
Burgay,
look, I
yeah.
mean, he was the starter last year, so I mean, at least from an ASU perspective, really didn't come out of nowhere. And look, some people say that he's only starting right now again, just because of the injuries to both Jaden Rashada and Drew Pine. And ironically, today, both of those quarterbacks returned to action in practice. Not that they're going to play this week, so I just want to eliminate that theory. But I'm curious to see down the stretch how many games one of them or both of them play. Do they actually take minutes away from Bourget or not? That's going to be interesting to see. Trent Bourget is not necessarily a bad quarterback, but he's just one of those quarterbacks where a lot of things around him have to be going really smoothly for him to be successful. And I think that the games that he did play well last year is because he did have a strong running game. And that's something that we actually got to see for the first time this year as a starter when DeCarlos Brooks and Cam Scadaboo had a healthier, I should say, offensive line blocking for them. Because when that came together against Washington State, then suddenly you saw like a total different offense, and an offense that went from scoring 7 points, in Seattle to almost scoring at will against Washington State. And yes, I know that the Huskies defense is quite better than the Cougars defense. Nobody's going to spin that in a different direction. But Trent Bourget is somebody who I think can be very, very effective. But again, just all the dominoes have to fit quite well. And I don't think he's a quarterback that can overcome a bad offensive line or overcome not really having a lot of support in the running game. And that actually showed against Cal and Colorado. Both games, Trent Bourget threw for over 300 yards. But because the running game was non-existent, and also some issues on offense in general, ASU ended up losing those two contests. Against a defense like Utah, I don't think that Trent Bourget is going to find a whole lot of success. And you can almost say there's no shame in that because unless your name is Bo Nix, every quarterback facing Utah is going to have a miserable afternoon, miserable evening. So I don't think that the offense in general is going to come anywhere close to the way they played against Washington State when they have to play Utah. And, I'm sure that that defense is pretty mad about what happened against Oregon. I mean, some people say there's no shame when the Ducks hang 30 points on you because
they're a good team, man.
Their offense is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious. And now seeing Washington only 2 weeks ago play ASU, I'm kind of curious how that's going to measure up to Oregon the week before Thanksgiving when they do come to Tempe. But I think that the Utah defense is going to see a much tamer Arizona State offense. This is not to knock Trent Bourget or any of the skilled players for the Sun Devils, but they're simply not at the level that a team like Oregon is right now. Maybe even a team like Oregon State, which obviously gave some fits to Utah a few weeks back. But I'm curious to see how much success this ASU offense can have against a really, really stiff test. Because even a team like Cal, where I'm not saying they're at the level of Utah defensively, but they're a pretty good defensive team. And I know they just gave up 50 points to USC a few days ago. But, against defenses that are better than average, Trent Bourget and the ASU offense had issues. And I'm expecting to be more of the same against the Utes, especially when the game's in Salt Lake City.
Sure. So a few more questions here for you, man. One of them actually is from one of our conversations that we had yesterday. But
Sure.
Before I even kick into that one, keys to the game. Okay. You were kind of talking about some of that stuff a little bit. I'm going to give you one key to the game. And it's one thing that Oregon actually did really well against Utah to mitigate things. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If the Sun Devils can get any form of a quick passing attack to keep Utah's defense on their heels and from being able to rush that quarterback, get all that pressure, right? A lot easier said than done with Oregon's offensive line compared to ASU's, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a big key right there. That's something that Oregon has done 2 years in a row, showing and exposing Utah's front seven. That's been extremely stout, right? So other than that, I mean, what are some other keys to the game for you that you see that could potentially help ASU upset Utah?
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, Alex, I think that Trent Bourget, actually, when it comes to quick passing, that's something that actually is in his wheelhouse. But like you said, the biggest question is the offensive line be able to block for him consistently, even if it is for a fraction of a second versus, two Mississippi, three Mississippi. So Trent Bourget is not a classic pocket quarterback as some other signal callers in the conference. But I'm curious to see if the quick passing attack, which I think ASU does have that element, can they really run it effectively? Because I think they have the quarterback. I think they have the skilled players. The running backs are good wide receivers in their own right. So that's something I think that Arizona State may be able to have some success, but level of effectiveness, level of consistency, that's obviously going to determine a lot. I don't mean to oversimplify this or get into any football cliches, but I think anytime you play a team like Utah, it really comes down to the physical element. I mean, you can draw plays, until you're blue in the face, but you just really need to have those that element of physicality show up on your offensive line and show up on your defensive line, because if it doesn't, it really is game over in the first quarter, the way I see it. I mean, I go back to that game that ASU played in 2018, Herm Edwards' first year, and Arizona State dominated Utah like no other. I mean, I think that even in years before that and years after that, when Arizona State beat Utah, they still didn't out-physical them as they did that afternoon. And that just really shows you that, again, not to sound too simplistic here, but if you can play at a higher physical level than Utah, which may be like an impossible bar to clear on most games of the year, then you'll find success. Is ASU capable of doing that? I mean, in theory, I think they are, but I'm not going to put the odds even at 50-50 of that happening. So that to me is going to be the first domino to fall. And if ASU somehow is able to win those physical battles, even if it's 55-45, then sure. I mean, they might have a chance on an upset, but I don't know if they really played any team up until now that's even close to being as physical as Utah. So it's hard for me to take any kind of measuring stick and look at it and say, oh yeah, ASU was able to be physical against such and such team, and so they're able to do that against Utah. I mean, actually, now that I talk through it, Oklahoma State may not be a great team. I mean, even though they got better after that ASU win, which wasn't all that shiny. And if you remember, it was really weird, not to go off at a tangent, the week after they beat ASU in Tempe, they lose at home in Stillwater to South Alabama. So just imagine ASU fans being pissed about that loss to Oklahoma State, and then seeing what the Cowboys did or didn't do the week later at home. I mean, that was just a little too much. But I'll tell you, I mean, sometimes you have that term. I know if it's the all coming off the bus team or the all airport terminal team, when you just see people that not sometimes in pads, sometimes not, just look absolutely physically imposing. And that Oklahoma State team was just ridiculous. I mean, it was like this one Megatron after another strutting on the field. Now, again, I'm not saying the most talented team in the country, maybe not even not the most talented team, at least not this year, in the Big 12. But ASU did have some issues against that physicality. So, now that I'm talking through my own theory over here, ASU wasn't really able to handle the Cowboys, which is a pretty physical team, all that well. So I can't say that a team that's even more banged up now than it was in week 2 against the Cowboys can do wonders against Utah. So to me, that's really going to be the key game. Again, you can talk about an obvious element that's going to dictate the game, but nonetheless, that's really going to determine quite a bit. And I don't think ASU has that physicality level that Utah has. I know Kenny Dillingham is striving to have that, but right now in 2023, the first week of November, they're simply not there.
For sure. So I want to get in a minute, I want to get your prediction for the game. Okay.
Sure.
Obviously I can kind of tell what way it's going to go. But there was no right spot to really fit this question in, but I think it's a really important one from our conversation yesterday and something that Dillingham brought up. Utah has really kind of set the bar in the conference and in the West for a team to model after for stability. Okay. Jonathan Smith has mentioned it over Oregon State. Look what they've started doing. Okay. Yeah. Arizona, Jed Fish has mentioned it. They have shown signs of life. And I know ASU fans don't want to hear that, right? But
no, of course, yeah.
Dillingham, you had mentioned. I haven't heard or seen the clip yet, but Dillingham recently mentioned something very similar. So if you could maybe talk about that comment and then just your translation of it from what you've seen from the Utes over their time in the Pac-12 and to where they are now, and why they should be a team that other programs want to model themselves after.
Well, here's the angle that I'll bring. Kenny Dillingham was on the Todd Graham staff. And Todd Graham, definitely had his shortcomings and what really eventually led to his downfall in Tempe. But one thing that you have to appreciate what Todd Graham did is that he increased the level of discipline, which was sorely needed after the Dennis Erickson era. And I know a lot of people used to have a warm place in their heart for Dennis Erickson, but he wasn't a good head coach in Tempe. I'm just going to call it as it is. He definitely let the inmates run the asylum. So the fact that Todd Graham was able to increase the discipline, and more importantly, just bring like the no nonsense attitude, that's something that Kenny Dillingham did definitely take notice of, and this is definitely the one aspect that he learned the most from Graham that he wants to implement here in Tempe now that he is a head coach. And I think the no nonsense, I think the discipline factor is really, really what defines Utah. They don't do it with glitz. They don't do it with glamour. They might have a nice, NIL program going, but it's never going to be USC or Oregon level. But they still get it done because they're able to find the right players, for their program, and players that are more interested in actually winning dang games than, having an NIL program of this sort or that sort. Although props to Utah for the truck NIL program that they have going.
Their leases. They weren't bought out.
No, sure, yeah, I know, I understand, but I have to tell you, Alex, man, 2023 is all about perception. It's all about it's all about the feels. Nobody cares about context and nuance and the fine print. It's like, yeah,
they all got trucks.
There's like 10 trucks or whatever they were on Rice-Eccles Stadium field. What else? That's it. You show that for 20 seconds and you can be done with it, right? But so I think that's why Kenny Dillingham is saying what he's saying. It's not only just seeing Utah and the success that they've sustained for several years now, and really, coming into the season, some people thought they're actually going to three-peat the Pac-12. And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, nobody won 3 consecutive in the Pac-12, and even the programs that won back-to-back, aside from Utah, are really few and far in between. Right. But people realize that as much as college football is all about the pizzazz, there still has to be a good element of meat and potatoes. And I hope that makes sense. Yeah. And Utah has that meat and potatoes, and they know exactly how to recruit and get those quote unquote diamonds in the rough. And once they bring them in, everybody knows what the culture is. And if there's a bad apple, that bad apple is gone in a New York minute. They don't let it linger around just because he was 4 stars out of high school and had 30 touchdowns his senior year. Utah doesn't care about that. So Kenny Dillingham definitely has a lot of no nonsense in him. And, maybe that's something that Kyle Whittingham has or hasn't been able to notice until now. But I think Kenny Dillingham definitely would love to see himself as a Kyle Whittingham. What is he, 65 or so, maybe pushing 70, and he's still there out coaching, and he's still able to be young at heart. And, he doesn't have to know all the words to every rap song out there, or know all the, the jargon that's going on right now with Generation Z. He just knows, like, okay, this is about football, and I know how to win football, and a lot of it is just really going back to the basics and just establishing a culture that just is going to trickle down to the rest of the team, and everything's going to fall in place. And people just sing with Utah. I mean, winning back-to-back Pac-12 championship, going to the Rose Bowl. When you see that philosophy materialize in what everybody should be caring about wins, about Pac-12 championships, about New Year's Day bowls, then that's what you want to emulate. So I think Kenny Dillingham, again, both from his Todd Graham background, if you will, as well as just being very in tune with what's going on with the Pac-12, even though he was coaching, years ago at the SEC, at the ACC, he always had a warm heart a warm piece of his heart. I'm sorry, for the Pac-12 because of ASU. He sees a lot of Todd Graham and Kyle Whittingham, and I would say even the good parts of Todd Graham and Kyle Whittingham, and that's why he wants to be Kyle Whittingham, and he wants Arizona State to be Utah. Again, you really just can't argue with the results. I mean, you can talk about, this is our philosophy, this is our culture. It will go over people's heads if year in and year out you're winning only 6-7 games. You're barely making it to a bowl. But again, when you're winning back-to-back Pac-12 championships, when you're going to the Rose Bowl, that's when people take notice. And that's when, okay, I'll take a little less money on the NIL. I'll take a lease truck instead of a truck that's paid for, whatever the case may be, because I'm going to be in the Rose Bowl on January 1st, and I'm going to have a Pac-12 championship ring. So when that philosophy ends up in tangible results and actions, everybody's happy. So I think Kenny Dillingham is absolutely right. That's a program that you want to emulate in the Pac-12. That might be the program you want to emulate in the Big 12, because I don't know if there's anybody in the Big 12 that can really claim that sustained success as Utah has. And I don't know if curious is the right word to use, but maybe I'll use it anyway. Curious to see what Utah does in the Big 12. If it's just really, just a copy and paste of their success from one conference to another, is it really going to be seamless for Utah? That's going to be interesting, because if it is, that's bad news not only to ASU, but even to the existing members of the Big 12 right now.
That's exactly right, man. No, I loved that response, and it was so detailed, and it's been pretty impressive to watch over this last decade and just see that unfold. I mean, I knew Utah had it in them to be able to have success. It's been crazy to see it coming. What's happened the last 5 or so years, right? Yeah. To the point where it's probably tough for Ute fans to be able to stomach what's going on right now. And Utah's still number 18 in the country and only 2 losses, but no. And heading into the Big 12, it's going to be really, really interesting to see, because, the Pac-12 teams moving into the Big 12, to me, I feel like the gauntlet got a little bit easier.
I agree.
To be able to make it to the CFP.
I agree. I think, again, I mean, I know the Pac-12, the perception is different a little now than it was in the month of September. Month of September, it was like 7-8 teams in the top 25. Yeah. So you look at that, and if your team like Utah says like, wow, if I'm doing this right now in the Pac-12, an absolute gauntlet of a conference, I'm looking at the Big 12, and the 2 teams everybody's talking about are not going to be there in 2024 in Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, sure, I get pretty excited to be in the Big 12. So that's why I think that the existing members of the Big 12, or I should say the members that are going to be there in 2024, they may not care that much about Colorado, Arizona State, and Arizona joining. But when it comes to Utah, I think that's a whole different story. And if they're really, football savvy, they know that what Utah experiencing right now is just a big hiccup, a small hiccup, however you want to look at it, en route to what's going to be probably a much better year in 2024. So I think that you talk about like ASU aspiring to be Utah. I think you might hear in a year or two some of the Big 12 programs, even though they're the grandfather programs in that conference, say, oh we like that new kid on the block, Utah. They're doing things right. This is what we want to be. So I wouldn't be surprised if you hear that from other publishers in maybe not 2024, but 25, 26, 27.
For
that
sure.
they're gonna just already take notice pretty quickly. Like say, we don't care that this program just came to our neck of the woods just 2-3 years ago. That's the standard right there. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to be the narrative. It's definitely going to be interesting and exciting times. I think just for Utah, like I said, the 3 other Pac-12 programs that is joining over there in the Big 12. But as the kids say, Alex, game recognizes game. So I think the Big 12 is going to recognize Utah if they haven't already pretty soon here.
Hey, you know what though? I mean, at the same time too, I really fully expect the majority of the Pac-12 teams to come in there and actually do well right off the bat. So we'll have to see. All right, man. So I mean, I've heard your phone buzzing a few times, so I apologize. You know, you and me can always talk forever, right? So
That's good.
short and sweet. Give me your game prediction. I mean, you've pretty much already hinted on all the reasons why.
Yeah.
I know that you're going to be picking what you're going to be picking. So
Yeah, I'm going to pick Utah to win 23-13. Again, I have all the respect for the Utah's defense. I know that what happened last week against Oregon, it's because they played Oregon. I'm not going to read anything more than that specific element. As much as ASU's offense finally looked like the offense we thought it could be, they're not playing Washington State this week. So I think they are going to have problems moving the chains, putting points on the board. Maybe it comes easier in the first half than the second half. We'll see. I know Utah's a team that does struggle on offense, but it's also a team that really is fueled by its defense, fueled by good special teams play. And the ASU defense, like I said, they really are exceptional group, and I think they definitely can find success against the Utah offense. But we've seen so many times this year when it comes to Arizona State that the defense plays their heart out, just making exceptional plays all over the field, but they're not getting any support from the offense. Sometimes not even getting good support from the special teams, and they just wear it down when it comes to the fourth quarter. So maybe that's another very unpleasant but familiar scenario that takes place for Arizona State. But I don't think Utah is going to light up the ASU defense by any means, but they can do just enough, like I said, to win it low double digits, 23-13.
for sure. So when we were doing our thing for you yesterday, I said 27-17. So I'll stick with that. I don't think it's going to be Utah blowing them out, but you know, we'll have to see. I mean, Utah is so injury ravaged that
Sure.
it's just, yeah, man. It's honestly, it's a tough score to predict. So,
Yeah.
all right, man. My guy, Hod Rabino. So tell everybody where they can find your work, man. You do an awesome job always. You've done this stuff for years, man. One of my absolute favorites to always go back and forth with, and one of the guys that I absolutely respect, man.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, I'm on the same Rivals network as Alex. My website is devilsdigest.com, and the Twitter handle, pretty simple, at Devil's Digest. We have and will have a bunch of content up there leading up to the game. So even if you're a Utah fan, if you'd like to see just the ASU perspective and how we're reviewing this contest, just head on down to devilsdigest.com.
There you go. You got some good Cronkite guys this year, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Always very lucky to have one of the best sports journalism schools in the country. And I do have a staff of young and aspiring journalists that really do a good job. We're very, very fortunate in that regard.
That's awesome, buddy. Well, yeah, let's keep in touch. We'll go grab some breakfast before, maybe over at like Hub and Spoke Diner or something like that, man. But it's a good spot, dude. But I gotta make sure I get a reservation just a couple days in advance. So
yeah, well, just make sure you make a reservation before this airs, because it might be hard to get a table. But now kind of doxed me too, so I got a bunch of Utah fans getting in my grill, but that's okay, man. As long as I'm enjoying a good breakfast in the process, and I did pick Utah to win, maybe they'll be kind when they see me.
There you go, man. Hey, you'd be with me, man. They'd look out for you. So
sounds good.
Hey, man, absolute pleasure. So
thanks, Alex.
Appreciate you always. You too.
See ya.
See ya.